So I just want to make a comment first, which was, it was kind of inspiring to hear somebody who works for the government advising people that they have to break the laws. I thought that was
the only way to really break about change. If you study history, that's the answer. So.
I'm a descendant of Rosa Parks.
Oh, okay. So you already knew the history. The gentleman back at his hand.
Since your very first talk, how has the color of your audience changed?
Say that again.
Like ever since like your first talk, like whenever you gave it, how has the color of your audience changed?
Which first talk are you talking about?
I don't know. When did you give your first talk?
In church when I was like 11. That was all black, by the way. So, I guess you're talking about in my career.
Yeah, in your career.
Well, I mean, I won't really focus on that. I think I'll answer the question another way. The question isn't about color of skin. The question is, are you willing to put in the work? I mean, that's what it's all about. It's not about color of skin. So in regards to that, for people who want to be allies in the work of oppressed people, and people who want to help in that part, one of the key things that you have to recognize is still going back to the steps. You have to first understand the history. You can't walk in and say, I want to help you people, if you don't know our story. You also can't walk in and say, I want to help you people, because that's offensive. Just being honest. The key thing that has to be done is we have to recognize how can we work together. So one of the key things that, it was in my speech, but I didn't want to be long-winded, was once again, each of us has a role to play. We have to know what our role is. So I'll give you a great example. I gave a speech at Iowa State University, and a lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, I want to get into civil and human rights, and I'm going to change my career. I said, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a banker. I said, whoa, no, you actually need to stay there. Why? Because the struggle, we live in the United States of America. The United States of America, the key thing is capital. We are in a capitalistic society driven by market. So it's about money. Slavery wasn't personal, it was business. And so the thing that you have to understand is, and this is what I told to the lady, I was like, you in your current position, you can open up the doors for so many people to move up the socioeconomic ladder by giving them access to loans, by teaching them the financial system, by getting them into banking. You don't need to do what I do. I don't need to do what I do. We need to infiltrate, deconstruct, and rebuild the systems that we're already a part of. And you can do that you can fight for social justice and people from anywhere. Church came and spoke to me a few months back and said, hey, we want to put this banner up. I said, what are you going to do after you put the banner up? We hadn't thought that through yet. Well, I said, it's bigger than the banner. Because I said, the first thing you need to do is really look internally and decide what talents and skills do we have to offer this community that we want to show our support to. It's bigger than a banner, and everybody has a role to play in that. You can fight for social justice from anywhere, doing anything. And I always tell people, one of the things that, and I kind of say this facetiously when I was saying it's time to look for a new job, but me personally, I've learned in the work that I do that I get stereotyped a lot. Oh, you do civil and human rights, so you only help black people, people whose English is not their first language, and poor people. And I said, you're right, but my job is to help everybody. And usually when you help the least of these, you help everybody. Who is the biggest beneficiary of the civil rights movement? Anybody want to take a stab at it?
white women.
Yeah, but I'm going in another direction, yes. So the second answer to that is business. Why? Because they had to desegregate, and guess what? They now have to take black people's money. Seriously, they were actually the biggest beneficiaries. At the time of the civil rights movement, black people had a $30 billion spending habit. And in the South, you couldn't actually even spend it in the South. My family, and families like theirs, whenever they wanted to buy a car, or get clothes, or go to a jewelry store, they actually had to go up north and get it. Because the people in the South were saying, you may got the money, but you ain't gonna never be like us. And so they had to go south. And that's another thing when people criticize the youth of the day, why they flaunting it, because they got it when they show off their new cars and clothes and stuff, because for so long we were denied the opportunity to get it. And that's something you have to understand when you know history. If you really understand history, why are these black kids flossing and stuff? Because previous generations, we were denied that. And so I don't think it's about the color of the audience. It's about what's in your heart. And I say that because there are people who pretend to be for the cause, and they're not. I was walking through the Rosa Parks Museum yesterday, and they had a police informant report of somebody who attended the first meeting, reporting back to the police what took place when they decided to vote yes to the boycott. And I'm like, dang, that's deep. They had police informants pretending, yeah, everybody want freedom. Who's singing that? There were people in there that weren't genuine, that weren't true, and they had the same skin color. And even King says, it's okay to be suspicious of persons who don't look like you, but you shouldn't let that dominate how you act and move. So I don't think it's about color, I think it's about heart. And the only way you demonstrate heart is through action. I can tell you all day, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. But if I never do anything for you, eventually those words are gonna just fall to the wayside, because love is an action word. It's not about feelings. I can play every R&B song all day, but it's about feeling. Yes, sir. You had your hand up for a moment.
I was gonna say, back in the days when black people were buying Cadillacs, they had to buy them somewhere.
Yeah, they had to go up north. That's what they had to do. Because they would not let them buy it in that town, and a lot of times in that state. You may got the money, but you'll never be equal to me. Now, that's true. Most people don't even know that part of history. And that's why I don't judge a lot of people who look like me who made false, because even they don't understand why they do what they do. But when you got a Cadillac, I don't know, they're like, if you ever seen the movie The Temptations, everybody pull up in a Cadillac, and everybody say, hey, look at my Cadillac. That was a sign of status. But it was because we had been denied of it for so long. And most people don't even know that part of history. Any additional? Yes?
With the Drake incidents happening on campus, it's mainly between freshmen. What can Drake put in place in their curriculum to teach racism?
Okay. All right.
They go through it so quick.
All right. So that's a great question. It was actually in my notes, and I think I skipped over that. But I'm glad you brought it up. So here's the thing that everyone has to know. I'm gonna answer, but I'm very long-winded. I try to answer questions like really deep. So give me one moment, I'll get to it, I promise. Here's the thing. We're not gonna end, if we do everything that I said, if we learn our history, if we find our role, we begin to organize with people like us, we start to strategize, and then we get moving and trying to address the issues that plague our society. That won't end every racist act. That's the key thing that everybody has on there. There's always an idiot. There's always a jokester. There's always somebody that just wants to do something for the hell of it. And sometimes, and a lot of times, those are racist people, bigoted people, etc. So we aren't going to try to end racism. But what we're going to do is we aren't going to try to end every bad act. The goal is to end racism, but we're not going to end every idiotic, stupid, bigoted act. The goal is to reduce it so low that it makes people think twice before they do it. Now, how do you do that? Number one, you do that through having a required course on race in the school system. And don't make it about a test grade. Because if it's just about a test grade, I'm just, okay, all right, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Fred, great, who was that? So people gonna try to memorize just to do it. But it actually needs to be not a class based on tests, but a class based on understanding history and trying to deconstruct that history to create a better future. And that's through conversation, that's through discussion, that's by even through a project on what project would you take to address this form of systemic racism. It could be many different forms, whether it's education, whether it's legal system, etc. That's the way to do it. But also, number two, you have a response team in to adequately respond when incidents do happen. First, you educate them to make them think twice about what they do. Form a group that's actually willing to address those issues, and when you do that, people will think twice before they do it. Because, okay, the whole school against me. Everybody know we ain't supposed to be doing this. Should I do this? And they know if they act on it, they have a system or a structure in place that will act rapidly to root that out. But once again, that's two parts. The education part, not the indoctrination part, is proactive. The system set in place when someone does a bad act is reactive. So there's two components there, because we know we're not going to end every bad act, every racist act, every sexist act overnight. But what we can do is educate people on why they shouldn't do that, the history behind why people did those things, the Cole Kelly, Megyn Kelly thing, and then we put a system in place to address those things when they come up.
I guess my question is, how might someone get through when they're trying to convince someone that they should care about racism?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get through to someone who maybe says, is a wall of saying, you can say that, you may have these facts, but my beliefs, my feelings are, like, they're more convincing to me than your facts.
Yes. I mean, I think that's a great question. How do you get through to people? Man, that's the question. I think part of that is because we don't teach history correctly. I'm gonna keep going back to history. I'm sorry. We don't teach history correctly. We teach it as once upon a time. We don't really get to the root of it. That's part of the problem. But directly to the people you're dealing with, we just finished a project, and we hope the documentary comes out before Christmas. And if she hasn't emailed this, maybe we'll add to it. Maybe the people here tonight will actually get to attend it. But we're going to premiere a documentary that we did, that we started working on this time last year. It's called Breaking Bread, Building Bridges. And what that documentary was about matching people together based on their differences. Whether you were a lesbian and we put them with a conservative pastor, whether you were an ex-felon and we put you with a cop, whether you were a young black person, we put you with an older white woman who happened to be your city council person in the award, but we didn't tell you that. And we put all those people together based on their differences. And we did a project where first time they had a public dinner, and where everybody was in the same room eating dinner. And then after that, we had, we brought everybody back together to have a dialogue on race. And we watched a documentary, real short documentary, but very good. It's called White People. You should watch it. We watched the documentary, we discussed it. And then we were only supposed to have that conversation. We had it actually here on Drake campus. The conversation, the discussion was only supposed to go 2 hours, 40 minutes watching the documentary and an hour and 20 discussing it. But the discussion went 4 hours. People couldn't stop talking. Because we were able first to break bread, and you were able to get to know your person, and now you're able to have a real conversation with them. And that very first dinner, we didn't try to tell you what the differences were. We did similarities bingo, and we showed how much you actually had in common. And we never even told them what the differences were. At the very last dinner, which took place a few months later, so we like, I still don't know why we different. I still don't know why you put us together. Like, really? Like, yeah. So, and then we told them, yeah, okay. Well, I just like this person so much. But after that documentary, then we took people into each other's homes. And what we did was, one time they went into one person's home, they had a casual dinner, however you have a dinner. And then they flipped it 2 weeks later, went to the other person's home and had a dinner. Casual dinner is however you have dinner with your family, with this cold pizza, spaghetti night, whatever. They did that, and then we brought everybody back together for a final dinner. And we discussed, what they had learned, etc. And a lot of people were really moved by the process because it had to get real. I mean, this was, it wasn't just people in a group, all in one group having a discussion. It was one-on-one. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a video of people just stare at each other for like 5 minutes and people start crying because we have to get real in that moment. Now, that being said, that's a hard process to do with everybody over and over again. I think the real answer to really breaking down things is first recognize, am I the messenger? There are certain people that ask me to speak places, and instead of me doing it, I send my colleague, Manisha Patel, because she's a woman, and it's probably easier for them to take it from her than it is for me. I have another colleague, Naomi. She's a white female. Sometimes I use her to say something, because if I say it, I may not be the right message. It bounces off people. But it's about building relationships. But are you the right person? Sometimes, and is this person your friend, by the way? Or is this somebody you know? Somebody that's just an associate, somebody acquaintance, okay. All right. I don't want to claim them, but in that case, one of the things that you should do is you should try to get to know that person on a one-on-one level and get to understand them. Make it all about that person. Understand everything it is about them. Because once you start to show people you care about them, then they want to care about you. And then bring them into your world, the things that you do, the things that you like to do. And part of that could be going to see a movie that touches on an issue. Hey, let's go see this movie. Now, if you tell them you hadn't built that relationship, nah, I ain't going. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to convert me, you liberal. But if you build a relationship, hey, man, let's do this one night. Sure, we went and did something I wanted to do last week. And you just slowly, once again, people don't have epiphanies. It's an evolution. The person I am today is not the person I was 5 years ago. The person I was 5 years ago is not the person I was 5 years before that. My mother hates that, but I'm changing. I'm evolving. I believe that if you don't evolve, you're dying. And the question is, what are we doing to evolve? And I think if you get to know that person on a personal level, they'll start to open up to you, and you'll start to break down things in them that they never even knew was inside of them. But it has to be that one-on-one. And it has to be genuine.
I have one question.
Go for it.
It's something you were talking about right at the beginning, that if you listen to or read speeches or writings from the early 1900s, if you watch videos from the mid-century, a lot of the issues are the same. A lot of the words and the problems are the same. So what are the changes that are systemic that exist today in race? In other words, if all these problems still exist, and the prison industrial system is similar to the slavery system, what are the positive changes that are really,
Oh, so you want the good stuff. All right, yes, all right. So first I'll say this. They say time changes everything, but it has to be us as the people who change the times. We change the times. So what good has happened? All right, well, I'm not in chains. All right, so yes, all right. So that's a positive. That is a positive. I'm not saying that there are no positives, but the thing that people have to understand is, even back in prior to the Civil War, there were still free blacks. I mean, there were free people, but the question is, what kind of freedom do we presently live in? So are we shackled to debt? So, for example, that's a form. Debt is a form of slavery. You are enslaved. I have to do this work. If I don't pay this bill, I get bad credit, because as a young person, they judge you by your GPA, but as an adult, they judge you by your credit score. So so yes, there are positive. People aren't physically in chains anymore based on color of skin, but we still have a prison system that still exists where people who can't afford a good lawyer. I read Joanne Cheatham said this in your art gallery right over here. She says, prison isn't made for the rich and the well-off. It's made for the poor. And I said, yes, she is so right. Most people who got money get off. Ask OJ. All right, so, jokes. So yes, there are positives. I do have the ability to walk into a clothing store and buy clothes now, something we were just talking about a moment ago. But I can also get followed when I'm walking through the store. Me personally, if I'm being 100% candid, normally when I go clothes shopping, and my wife can tell you this, when I go the very first time to buy clothes, I look just like this. And I say, can you put that on hold for me? And I come back a few days later with a hoodie and some jeans and some shoes, and I walk in and I try to see, when I try to go to get it, will they treat me the same way? And I learned that actually by accident. I was a poor college student, and I walked in, and I was a poor law school student, and I needed some clothes. I needed the right coat and everything, and I walked into a store. And I had one suit, and I said, I need another one, because if I go to this thing I go to this tournament, mock trial thing, I wear the same suit 2 days in a row. Oh, you're poor. Yeah, got it. So I needed another suit. But I walked in wearing the first suit, and when I walked in, man, they were shaking my hand, they were showing me around, I was trying this stuff, but I didn't have the money. And I said, can we put that on hold? And they put it on hold for me, and I, begged my dad, please, remember you told me I went to this law school, you take care of me, and you still hadn't showed up on it. I need you to pony up on that. Give me my money. All right. So he finally gave my money, and I went back to the store just on a dress down day, jeans, shoes, a hoodie, and nobody would even help me. I'm like, oh, word? And it was the same people. It wasn't like nobody different. It was the same people. And I was like, locked it in the brain, and I do that every time now. And it still happens, that if I'm dressed like this, I get, even with the police, I've gotten stopped by the police. Most of the time that I get stopped by the police, I'm probably in my work clothes. Give you an example, when I first moved to Des Moines, it was really stupid. Old habits die hard. But cop, I was at a stoplight, I was at a stop sign, and a cop pulled up. My wife's laughing because she knows the story already. But a cop pulled up behind me. I looked at my rear, oh shoot, a cop, and just ripped straight through the stop sign. I was kind of, woo, hey, what's going on, guy? I just literally just drove straight, oh shoot, a cop, and just drove through the side. I wasn't doing nothing wrong, just old habit. I don't shoot the police. And the cop stopped me, and he said, hey sir, oh, hey. And then he looked at me like, oh, the guy's in a suit. Yeah, what's going on? Officer, I just had a brain for it. I'm sorry. He was like, have a nice day. And I'm like, hey, man, keep this thing on. Imagine. But, I mean, once again, I imagine if I had been dressed down, that person would have said, sir, have you been drinking, or do you have any drugs? I smell marijuana. Get out. Yeah, I mean, I just imagine that would have happened, because I've seen that same thing happen to other people that look like me, but aren't necessarily dressed like me. So this costume that I wear does pay off a lot, because once again, one thing I do understand is that I live, I breathe, I walk, and I work in a system that was not designed for me. Therefore, I know if I don't look the role or play the part, that they can come in and jump in on me anytime. So I can never get comfortable in my surroundings, and always test it just to make sure, is it still the way I thought it was? Most of the clothes I buy online now, but I have done the suit test recently, and I got crappy service when I walk back in. So yeah, things are better, but are they better because the people believe in equality and equity? Or are they better because they believe, well, if you follow the rules and stay in line, you're gonna make it? There used to be a statement that they said to black people, I think died out in the 80s, you're a credit to your race. Pretty sure you heard that before. Yeah, you're a credit to your race. Or, when I'm with you, I don't see black. Really? I mean, that's a compliment. No, that's not a compliment. Because you're trying to say I need to conform to what you are in order to be accepted. So yeah, there are positives. But are there positives because people want to do the right thing? Or are there positives that people don't want to get in trouble with the law and do wrong? There's two different things.
Hi.
Hey.
So this might be a little long of an explanation for...
Can't be longer than mine.
I'm in a course right now, and for a part of time we studied the social rights movement, and we talked about the differences between Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and how the narratives of the two were kind of seemed like differently, even though really they had the same exact message.
Right.
Where Martin Luther King Jr. was a Christian pastor, he was traditionally educated, he had a family, and he was nonviolent. Whereas Malcolm X was Muslim, not traditionally educated, but still educated in his own ways.
Yes.
And also nonviolent, but was willing to get violent when others got violent. So I'm wondering if you have any additions to this argument of the whitewashing of black narratives,
Oh,
or
yeah.
if you have any options for how to combat that in our day-to-day lives, or just any information.
All right, first of all, that's great. I like your class. What class is that?
Sociology of the 60s.
Oh man, that's a great class. I bet y'all spent a lot of time on 1968. Oh man, God, I gotta get in that class. They ain't had those classes when I was in school. Now, that's a great class. Yeah, because honestly, when I say the keys to the future are lost in the past, I think we dropped them off in 1968. I just think we just all the social programs and things that we were working on during the Great Society and that coming from the New Deal, et cetera, we just lost it. I mean, most of the books in my house are honestly between the 1930s and the 1960s, and a lot of them from the 1960s. I really don't need to read a lot of modern stuff because the same issues are still going on. As you probably are realizing in your class, you say, yes, exactly, the same issues are still going on, exactly. So here's the thing, and I don't have, actually this won't be the longest explanation I have. Once again, if society can prep you up to be a model of what the powers that be want you to be, they'll do that. Martin Luther King. And if they want to break you down so you don't inspire a next generation to rebel, they'll blackwash you. Malcolm X. So it's a black and a whitewashing. So it's one or the other. I would say they whitewash King and blackwash Malcolm. And going back to your point, as they both got older in the movement, they started to move closer to each other. Malcolm X, he, in his earlier years, he called Martin Luther King a Tom all the time, Tom. But he actually went back and apologized and tried to visit him in jail in Selma during everything that was happening down there. And he spoke in the same church that Martin was at, but Martin was in jail, so they weren't able to talk. So he talked to Coretta. But he started to shift towards we have to do more than just throw a fire out. We have to strategize. We have to organize. We have to move. So his last 11 months of his life, he was trying to undo some of the things that he learned when he was in the Nation of Islam. He became an Orthodox Muslim, and he started to move and shift towards King's place. King, on the other hand, started to shift more towards Malcolm X. He moved from nonviolence to civil disobedience. Same thing, but he believed that we had to do more than just march. And he also came up with Operation Breadbasket, where they had the policy of, you don't buy where you can't work. And they started to change policies in Chicago and Atlanta. They really started to shift towards one another. So I guess the thing is really just know history. There's a great Bible verse at the King Memorial in Memphis. It says, "Let us kill the dreamer and watch what happens to the dream," quoting Joseph from Genesis. And they killed him, and then they transformed. Most people, all they ever know about Martin Luther King is that I have a dream speech. They don't talk about those last 5 years of his life, especially those last two, from 66 to 68, when he started to go in on Vietnam. And in 1983, when they were having the vote on whether to make King a national holiday, because when King died, King was persona non grata. They didn't like him. He actually dropped off in the popularity polls because he stood up against Vietnam, and they were saying, "King, this ain't your role. You're supposed to be focused on just race." And so he wasn't very popular. He wasn't, right before he died, he was not a very popular person. He died when he was 36, I believe, maybe 38. He died when he was 38. And when he died, everybody, "Oh, Martin Luther King, RFK, JFK, everybody, well, RFK, Johnson and everybody. But in 1983, they asked Reagan, how can you do this? Like, why are you gonna make King a federal holiday? He said, either I can do it and shape the narrative, or I can let somebody else do it. He went with the former, where he shaped the narrative. They shaped the narrative of what King was, and that's what fell into the textbook. You know, before King, Booker T. Washington was the model Negro, for lack of better words. But we don't study all of history. We need to study how did the Martin Luther King Jr. Day get passed. And when you read about those Reagan notes from the Reagan era when they're asking why he's doing this, he said, I can shape the narrative. I'd rather do it that way. That's the reason why I got white. But it's really about a studying of history. I mean, I think that's the answers. And once again, the good thing about America is they give it all to us. Just walk into a library. All you gotta do is pick up a book. It's all there. In America, they tell you everything. All you gotta do is, LeVar Burton said, just take a look. It's in a book. There's one more question. Yeah.
Well, I thought you mentioned Edna Griffin, and she was the driving force behind that protest back in 1948 to catch drugstores. But there were great students that were actively involved too, white great students. John Bibbs was one of the persons who filed complaining charges that led to the Iowa Supreme Court decision that changed it. So there is a history and tradition of great students being involved. I would suggest that, Joshua mentioned the NAACP, and he mentioned the legal work the NAACP does. But 99% of those who are NAACP members are not lawyers. They're working on education, criminal justice reform, voting rights, a variety of veterans' rights, a variety of other things. And there are college chapters of the NAACP around the nation. And I would humbly submit that those that are interested, why it'd be great to have a NAACP college chapter here. There's no reason we'd be happy to help to set that up if you're interested. One of the things that might flow from that, the young lady's question over here and Josh's response reminds me that back in 1995, in the beginning of the second term of President Clinton, he had a race initiative that was really hopeful. And one of the things that it was built around was a set of honest conversation circles. And these were groups of citizens that just came together, interracial groups that had kind of a format to say, let's get to know each other, then let's talk about these race issues. And let's develop a trust level so that if somebody says something that somebody thinks is a racial stereotype, we can tell them about that, but we're not going to challenge them their good faith or think that they're going to learn from this process, that they're not a racist because they maybe made a blunder or stuff like that. I know that my wife and I, we participated in those. They were really, really helpful. So good that they went for probably we met every month for like 6 or 7 months, and then the group was so enjoyed it. We continued to meet for a year and a half after that in people's homes and so on, just to continue that. And I think that'd be something that Drake could set up if there was the kind of interest. But anyway, just some suggestions that there are things that you can do. I can tell you, for having been an NAACP lawyer, volunteer for 44 years, there are white people that are involved in the NAACP. You can make a real difference, and it's a great way to learn and bring your elevator and to organize and the things that Josh was talking about.
All right. Thank you very much.